My grandfather kept trying to drown me and my brother at his pool parties for our $18 million trust funds, so I crushed his blood pressure pills into his scotch. Now his new wife tried to finish the job but got life in prison instead. It was my cousin Ellie. She drowned at a family reunion 3 years ago when everyone thought she just cramped up in the deep end. The video showed Grandpa holding her down while she thrashed, his face calm and focused like he was conducting an experiment. My hands shook as I scrolled through more videos. There were at least a dozen kids, all from our extended family. Some I recognized from old Christmas cards. Others were too young for me to place. Each video had a date and initials. Grandpa had been doing this for years, practicing on other people's children at the country club before moving on to family members. I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly pocketed Grandpa's phone. A woman in her 30s burst through the door, blonde hair perfectly styled despite the nursing home's fluorescent lighting. She wore designer clothes and enough jewelry to fund a small business. "Where is it?" She scanned the room, her eyes landing on me. "You must be one of William's grandkids. I'm Brenda, his wife." Wife? Grandpa had been single since Grandma died 5 years ago. I stood up slowly, keeping my hand in my pocket. "Nice to meet you," I managed. She stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming in the small room. "The nurses said someone was visiting. They also mentioned William's phone was missing from his bedside table." My pulse hammered, but I kept my face neutral. "I haven't seen it." Brenda's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Sweetheart, I have power of attorney now. Everything of William's belongs to me, including that phone. Hand it over." "I told you, I don't have it." She grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Listen carefully. I know exactly what's on that phone because I helped plan every single detail. Those trust funds your grandmother set up? I need that money to pay off some very angry people in Atlantic City." I tried to pull away, but she tightened her grip. "You're lying. Grandpa would never—" "Your grandfather was a genius," she interrupted. "We worked out the whole system together. Accidental drownings, grieving families, money flowing back to the estate. I married him last month in Vegas right before his little diving accident." Her eyes narrowed. "Which happened at his 4th of July party, wasn't it? Right after you were alone with his drinks?" My blood turned cold. She knew. "I have security footage," Brenda continued. "You near the bar, handling his scotch. The police would find that very interesting, especially if I mention how you've been obsessed with your inheritance." I finally yanked my hand free. "You can't prove anything. I don't need to prove it, sweetheart. I just need to make enough noise that your parents believe it. From what William told me, they're desperate enough to believe anything that keeps the money flowing." She straightened her jacket and headed for the door. "You have 24 hours to return that phone. After that, I'll be paying your family a visit. And trust me, you don't want me spending time with little Noah at the pool." The threat hung in the air after she left. I sat back down, my legs shaking. Grandpa's eyes tracked my movement, and I saw something new in them. Fear. He was afraid of Brenda. I pulled out the phone and found her contact information. The messages between them went back months, discussing practice runs and target selection. One thread made my stomach turn. They'd been ranking family members by trust fund size and swimming ability. Noah's name had 3 stars next to it. Over the next week, Brenda started showing up everywhere. She appeared at our house with flowers, playing the grieving wife perfectly. My parents ate it up, especially when she mentioned possibly helping with their debts once Grandpa's estate was settled. "Such a tragedy," Mom said over coffee while Brenda dabbed at fake tears. "William was so healthy for his age. He pushed himself too hard." Brenda sighed. "Always trying to impress people with those dives. I told him to be careful." I watched from the kitchen doorway as she worked them over. Dad actually patted her hand in comfort. When she suggested we all go to the community pool together to honor William's love of swimming, they immediately agreed. At the pool, Brenda stayed close to Noah. She kept encouraging him to try the diving board, offering to catch him in the deep end. I stuck to them like glue, but she was patient. When Noah went to the bathroom, she followed. I intercepted them at the door. "I need to talk to you," I said. Brenda smiled sweetly. "Of course, dear. Noah, why don't you go ahead? I'll catch up." After he went inside, her expression hardened. "Time's running out. I know what you did to Ellie." She shrugged. "Prove it. William's not talking, and I made sure there were no witnesses. Just like there won't be any witnesses when poor Noah has his accident." I spent that night backing up the videos to every cloud service I could find. I tried showing my parents, but when I pulled out Grandpa's phone, Mom immediately called Brenda. "She's having some kind of breakdown," Mom whispered into the phone. "She stole William's phone, and now she's making up horrible stories." Brenda arrived within the hour with 2 security guards from Grandpa's estate. "This is estate property," she announced, holding out her hand. "I could press charges, but family is family." Dad actually helped wrestle the phone away from me. "You need help," he said. "This obsession with your grandfather isn't healthy." "She's trying to hurt Noah," I screamed, but they weren't listening. Brenda pocketed the phone and squeezed my shoulder. "Get some rest, sweetheart. You've been through a lot." The next few days were hell. My parents grounded me and took my laptop, convinced I was having a mental breakdown. Brenda had given them articles about teenage stress and trauma responses. She'd even found a therapist who specialized in grief-induced paranoia. Meanwhile, she got bolder. She signed Noah up for private swimming lessons at the country club, volunteering to drive him since my parents were too busy with work. She sent them photos of Noah smiling by the pool, building their trust while I pounded on my locked bedroom door. Everything came to a head on Thursday. Brenda had convinced my parents to let her take Noah to the pool while they met with a financial advisor she'd recommended. I was supposed to be locked in my room, but I'd been practicing picking the lock with bobby pins I'd hidden. The moment I heard their cars leave, I got to work. The lock clicked open after 10 minutes. I grabbed my bike and pedaled harder than I ever had in my life. The country club pool was nearly empty on a Thursday afternoon. I spotted them immediately. Brenda had Noah in the diving well, the deepest part of the pool at 15 feet. She was teaching him to retrieve dive sticks, but I could see her positioning. She kept guiding him to the center, away from the edges. The teenage lifeguard was dealing with some kind of emergency at the shallow end. A woman was screaming about her toddler having a seizure. I realized Brenda must have staged it. I didn't think. I just ran and dove. The water was cold and over-chlorinated, burning my eyes just like at Grandpa's pool. I saw Brenda holding Noah down, her manicured nails digging into his shoulders. He was struggling, but she was stronger, using her body weight to keep him under. I slammed into her underwater, the impact knocking her sideways. She let go of Noah and turned on me, her face twisted with rage even beneath the surface. We grappled in the deep end, her nails raking across my face. She was stronger than she looked, probably from hours at the gym spending Grandpa's money. She got her hands around my throat and squeezed. My lungs screamed for air, but I couldn't surface with her weight on me. Black spots danced in my vision. This was how Ellie must have felt, how all those kids felt. Then Noah was there, skinny arms wrapping around Brenda's neck from behind. The surprise made her loosen her grip just enough. I kicked hard, breaking free and dragging Noah up with me. We broke the surface, gasping. Brenda came up seconds later, immediately switching to victim mode. "Help! They attacked me! These children are crazy!" But Noah found his voice. The kid who'd been too scared to speak up about Grandpa finally screamed the truth. "She tried to drown me. She held me under. She said I'd see Ellie soon." The lifeguard abandoned the fake emergency and dove in. Other club members were gathering, phones out, recording everything. Brenda tried to swim away, but the lifeguard corralled her to the edge. "Call the police," I gasped. "Check her phone. She has messages with my grandfather about drowning kids for money." Brenda's face went white. "You little bitch. You don't have any proof. I have that phone. I backed everything up to Grandpa's iCloud," I said. "His password was your birthday. You really thought you were special, didn't you?" The police arrived within minutes. The country club had security cameras everywhere, and while the underwater footage wasn't clear, it showed Brenda taking Noah to the deep end while creating a distraction. Combined with Noah's testimony and the promise of those backed-up videos, they had enough to arrest her. As they led her away in handcuffs, she kept screaming about being set up. The detective who took our statements seemed very interested when I mentioned the videos of other children. By evening, they'd accessed the cloud backup and found everything. Messages, videos, financial records showing Brenda's gambling debts, even a list of future targets. The investigation exploded from there. They found evidence of at least 15 suspicious drownings over the past decade, all connected to family trust funds. They discovered Brenda wasn't even her real name. She was actually Bethany Morrison, a con artist who'd married 3 other elderly men who'd all died under suspicious circumstances. My parents arrived at the police station in shock. The financial advisor Brenda had sent them to was actually an FBI agent investigating her for fraud. They'd been building a case for months, and our situation gave them the final pieces. "I'm so sorry," Mom kept saying, holding Noah tight. "We should have listened. We should have protected you." Dad couldn't even look at me. The guilt was eating him alive, realizing he'd helped a killer get closer to his children because he was blinded by money. The next months were a blur of legal proceedings. Brenda, or Bethany, was charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and dozens of other crimes. Other families came forward with suspicious pool accidents. Grandpa's estate was frozen pending investigation. I visited Grandpa one last time before the trial. He was thinner, grayer, trapped in a body that wouldn't obey him. I pulled up a chair and showed him photos on my phone. Brenda in handcuffs, news articles about the investigation, the trust funds being redistributed to victims' families. Ellie's parents are using the money to start a foundation, I told him. Free swimming lessons for kids, with background-checked instructors and strict safety protocols. They're calling it Ellie's Wave. His eyes filled with tears, not sadness, pure rage at losing everything. Noah's competing now, I continued. Turns out when you're not trying to murder him, he's actually a great swimmer. He dedicated his first medal to Ellie. A tear rolled down Grandpa's frozen cheek. The nurse came in to check on him, praising me for being such a devoted grandchild. If only she knew. I left the nursing home with my hands still trembling. The weight of everything I'd discovered pressed down on me as I walked to my bike. Ellie's face haunted me from those videos. Her desperate thrashing burned into my memory. How many other cousins had we lost to accidents over the years? How many family reunions had ended in tragedy while Grandpa perfected his technique? The ride home gave me time to think. Brenda knew about the videos. She'd helped plan everything, and now she had the phone with all the evidence. 24 hours wasn't much time, especially when she'd already started working on my parents. I could see it in their eyes at dinner that night, the way they kept glancing at each other when they thought I wasn't looking. "Brenda called," Mom said, pushing food around her plate. "She's really worried about you. Said you were acting strange at the nursing home today." I kept my voice steady. "She's not who she says she is." Dad set down his fork with a sharp clink. "Enough. This has to stop. Your grandfather grandfather had a stroke. It was an accident, nobody's fault. But the videos, what videos? Mom's voice cracked. Honey, Brenda explained everything. Grief can make us see things that aren't there. She found a wonderful therapist who specializes in— I pushed back from the table. You're really going to believe her over me? She's trying to help. Dad's face flushed red. Unlike you, stealing from a sick old man. His phone. Really? What were you thinking? I wanted to scream the truth at them, but I could see Brenda's manipulation already taking root. They needed to believe her lies because the alternative, that they'd been offering up their children to a killer for years, was too horrible to accept. Noah hadn't said a word during dinner. He just stared at his plate, shoulders hunched. After our parents went to bed, I found him sitting on his bedroom floor, sorting through his swimming medals. I don't want to go to the pool anymore, he whispered. I sat beside him. You don't have to. Mom says Brenda signed me up for special lessons. Says I need to get over my fear. My stomach clenched. It was starting already. When? Thursday. Brenda's going to pick me up after school. 3 days. I had 3 days to figure out how to stop this. I stayed up all night trying to remember the passwords for Grandpa's cloud accounts. His email was easy. He used the same combination for everything. But the cloud storage needed 2-factor authentication, and the recovery phone number was his. The next morning, Brenda's car sat in our driveway like a predator waiting to strike. She was having coffee with Mom in the kitchen, a box of pastries on the table between them. There she is. Brenda smiled at me. Feeling better today, sweetheart? I grabbed an apple from the counter. Much better. Good. I was just telling your mother about a wonderful opportunity. The country club is looking for junior swim instructors. Paid position. Looks great on college applications. Mom's eyes lit up. That sounds perfect. You've always been such a strong swimmer. The training starts this weekend, Brenda continued. I could put in a good word with the aquatics director. He owes me a favor. I recognized the trap immediately. Get me alone at the pool, away from witnesses. An accident during training would be so tragic. Promising teenager drowns while practicing rescue techniques. I forced myself to smile. That's really generous of you. Family helps family, she said, but her eyes promised something else entirely. After she left, I tried one more time with Mom. I pulled up news articles on my laptop about con artists who targeted elderly victims. I showed her statistics about family members who committed fraud. She listened for about 5 minutes before closing the laptop. This is exactly what Brenda warned us about. She said you might become fixated on conspiracy theories. It's a coping mechanism. Mom, please, just look at the facts. The facts are that your grandfather had a stroke and you're struggling to process it. Brenda's therapist can see you tomorrow at 4. I spent the rest of the day planning. If my parents wouldn't listen, I needed proof they couldn't ignore. The cloud backup was my only hope, but I needed Grandpa's phone for the authentication code, which meant I needed to get it back from Brenda. That night, I heard my parents arguing in hushed voices. Dad mentioned something about a second mortgage and Mom started crying. Their financial situation was worse than I'd realized. No wonder Brenda's promises of help had hooked them so completely. Wednesday arrived with another surprise. Brenda showed up with Noah's new swim gear, goggles, fins, and a team suit with his name embroidered on it. For tomorrow's lesson, she explained, ruffling his hair. The instructor likes his students to look professional. Noah flinched at her touch but tried to hide it. I watched her hands, those manicured nails that would soon be holding him under. The rage that filled me was cold and focused, just like Grandpa's had been in those videos. I followed Brenda to her car. I've been thinking about your offer. She turned, eyebrow raised. Oh, the phone. I might know where it is. Her smile was sharp. I already have the phone, sweetheart. Remember? That was Grandpa's old phone. The one with the videos is hidden in his study. He showed me once. I saw the flicker of interest in her eyes. She thought there might be more evidence she needed to destroy. If you're lying to me, Thursday, during Noah's lesson, I'll meet you at the estate and show you where it is. She studied me for a long moment. If this is some kind of game, your brother pays the price. Understand? I nodded. She drove away, and I went inside to prepare. Thursday morning came too fast. Noah dragged his feet getting ready for school, complaining of a stomachache. Mom dismissed it as nerves and sent him anyway. I skipped my last 2 classes and biked to Grandpa's estate. The security code hadn't been changed yet. Brenda was probably waiting for the will to be finalized. I went straight to the poolside cabana where I'd found Grandpa's blood pressure medication. The bottles were still there, along with something new, Brenda's purse. She must use this as a changing room. Inside, I found what I was looking for, Grandpa's phone, the real one with all the evidence. My hands shook as I entered his passcode. The cloud backup was there, waiting. I started the download to my own account, watching the progress bar crawl forward. 5 minutes. 10. The files were huge. I heard a car in the driveway. Brenda was early. I shoved the phone back in her purse and slipped out the back, circling around to meet her at the front door. You're early, she said, suspicious. Wanted to make sure I remembered which room. She followed me inside, heels clicking on the marble floors. I led her to Grandpa's study, buying time while the download continued on her phone in the cabana. He kept a hidden safe behind the Shakespeare collection, I lied, pulling books from the shelf. Brenda pushed me aside, greedy hands searching for a safe that didn't exist. While she was distracted, I checked my phone. Download complete. There's nothing here, she snarled. Must be the wrong shelf. Maybe. She slapped me hard across the face. You little brat. Did you really think you could outsmart me? I tasted blood. Noah's lesson doesn't start for another hour. Change of plans. He's already at the pool. My friend Christopher Christopher is giving him a private session. Very exclusive, very deep water. My blood turned to ice. She'd lied about the time. Noah was already in danger. I ran for the door, but Brenda was faster, grabbing my hair and yanking me backward. We crashed into Grandpa's desk, papers flying everywhere. She was stronger than she looked, those gym-toned arms holding me down. Should have minded your own business, she hissed. Now you get to join your cousin Ellie. I grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy glass paperweight, and swung it at her head. She dodged, but it caught her shoulder. She cursed and loosened her grip just enough for me to break free. I ran through the house, Brenda's heels clicking behind me. She was screaming threats, promises of what she'd do to Noah if I didn't stop. I burst out the back door and sprinted toward the pool house. The country club was 15 minutes by car, 20 by bike. I didn't have time for either. I grabbed Brenda's keys from her purse and ran for her Mercedes. I'd never driven alone before, only practiced in parking lots with Dad. The engine roared to life and I slammed it into reverse, nearly hitting the garden wall. Brenda appeared in the rearview mirror, running after me in her designer dress. The drive was a blur of honking horns and swerving cars. I ran 2 red lights and took the country club entrance so fast the tires squealed. The parking lot was nearly empty. Thursday afternoon lull, just like Brenda had planned. I abandoned the car and ran for the pool entrance. Through the glass doors I could see them. Noah in the diving well, that same instructor from the shallow end distraction, Christopher. He was holding Noah's shoulders, pushing him down for breath-holding practice. But something was wrong. Noah wasn't coming up. 30 seconds. 40. The lifeguard was nowhere to be seen. I burst through the doors and dove fully clothed. The chlorine stung my eyes, but I could see Noah at the bottom, not moving. Christopher saw me coming and tried to block my path, but rage gave me strength. I drove my elbow into his stomach and he doubled over, releasing Noah. I grabbed my brother and kicked hard for the surface. He was limp, not breathing. I screamed for help as I dragged him to the edge. An elderly woman in the lap lane started shouting. Finally, people were paying attention. I pulled Noah onto the deck and started CPR, pumping his small chest the way I'd learned in health class. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe. His lips were blue. How long had he been under? Come on, I begged. Come on, Noah. Christopher tried to interfere, claiming it was just practice, but the elderly woman shoved him back. I saw everything. You held that child under. I'm calling 911. More people gathered. Someone took over chest compressions while I held Noah's hand. Time stretched like taffy. Then, finally, he coughed. Water poured from his mouth and he gasped, eyes flying open. It's okay, I sobbed. You're okay. The paramedics arrived within minutes, followed by police. Christopher tried to slip away, but 2 fathers from the swim team blocked his exit. I heard him on the phone, voice panicked. She said it would look like an accident. You didn't tell me there would be witnesses. I gave my statement while the paramedics checked Noah. Yes, I knew who hired Christopher. Yes, I had evidence. Yes, I could access it right now. I pulled up the cloud backup on my phone, showing the detective the first video. Grandpa holding Ellie under, the timestamp, the methodical notes. The detective's face went pale. How many videos are there? Dozens. And messages between my grandfather and Brenda planning more. They arrested Christopher on the spot. Attempted murder, conspiracy, child endangerment. He broke immediately, claiming Brenda had paid him $5,000 in cash to make it look like an accident. My parents arrived in a panic. Mom hysterical, and Dad white as paper. The detective pulled them aside, and I watched their worldview shatter in real time as he explained what had been happening. Mom collapsed into a chair. Dad threw up in a trash can. All those weekends, Mom whispered. We kept taking them back. The guilt would eat them alive. Good. They'd served us up on a silver platter, and only luck had kept us alive. Brenda was arrested at the estate, trying to burn documents in Grandpa's fireplace. The police found financial records, forged marriage certificates, and a list of every child in our extended family with their trust fund amounts and swimming abilities annotated. But the real shock came when they searched her apartment. She wasn't just Bethany Morrison. She had 6 different identities, 12 passports, and newspaper clippings of drowning victims going back 20 years. She'd been doing this since she was 19, moving from state to state, family to family. The FBI took over the investigation. Suddenly, our house was full of agents cataloging evidence. They found connections to cases in Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, wealthy families with pools and trust funds, grandparents who liked to swim with their grandchildren. I sat with Noah at the hospital while he recovered. He hadn't said much, but he held my hand tight. I knew she was bad, he finally whispered. She smelled wrong, like chlorine and lies. Why didn't you tell Mom and Dad? He looked at me with eyes too old for his face. Would they have listened? He was right. They'd been so blinded by desperation and greed that they'd ignored every red flag. Even now, I could hear Mom in the hallway telling anyone who'd listen that she'd had no idea, that she'd never suspected. The lie came so easily to her. The cloud backup revealed everything. 15 confirmed murders over 10 years, 3 more attempts that failed. Grandpa had been methodical, scientific in his approach. He'd studied drowning patterns, practiced on non-family members first, perfected his technique before moving on to blood relatives. The trust funds were the key. Grandma had been generous but specific. Education money for her grandchildren, untouchable by parents or other relatives, unless the child died before 18. Then it reverted to the estate. Grandpa had been hemorrhaging money for years, bad investments and expensive mistresses. The trust funds were his solution. One by one, nieces and nephews had tragic accidents. Pool parties, beach vacations, lake houses. Always witnesses who saw nothing suspicious. Always grieving families who collected insurance money and never questioned the circumstances. Until Ellie. Something about her death had been different. Maybe it was her age, only 6 years old. Maybe it was the way she'd fought, harder than the others. But Grandpa had kept that video, watched it over and over like he was trying to understand something. That's when Brenda entered the picture. She'd recognized a kindred spirit, worked her way into his life, convinced him they could be partners. She brought fresh ideas, new techniques, the chemical burns to obscure evidence, the staged distractions, the careful psychological manipulation of parents. They'd planned to work through the entire family tree, collecting trust funds like bloody poker chips. Noah and I were supposed to be numbers 16 and 17. Clean accidents, grieving parents, money flowing back to the estate where Brenda would be waiting as the legitimate widow. The detective showed me Brenda's notebook, decoded from her apartment. She'd rated each child on a scale of 1 to 10. Ease of access, parental negligence, swimming ability, trust fund value. Noah had scored a perfect 10. I was only a 7. Too strong a swimmer, too suspicious. She was going to do you last, the detective explained. Make it look like survivor's guilt. Distraught teenager drowns herself after losing her brother. I thought about all those family reunions, all those pool parties where death had been circling us like a shark. How many times had we been seconds away from joining Ellie? How many careful plans had been disrupted by random chance? The news broke nationally. Grandfather and accomplice murdered family children for inheritance money. Our photos were everywhere. School became impossible. Reporters camped outside our house. Mom started drinking heavily while Dad walked around in a permanent daze. But the worst part was the other families coming forward. Cousins I'd never met, telling stories about their siblings who'd drowned. An aunt in Maine whose daughter had died at a pool party I vaguely remembered attending. An uncle in Florida whose son had disappeared during a beach trip. They all wanted to know why nobody had noticed the pattern, why nobody had protected their children, why it had taken a 16-year-old dosing her grandfather with his own medicine to stop the killing. I didn't have answers for them. All I had was the image of Ellie fighting for her life while Grandpa held her down, perfecting his technique for the grandchildren who'd come after. The trials would take years. Brenda faced federal charges in multiple states. Christopher flipped immediately, providing detailed testimony about how she'd recruited him. Other accomplices came forward, pool maintenance workers and lifeguards who'd been paid to look the other way. But Grandpa would never face justice. He sat in his nursing home bed, trapped in a body that had betrayed him, watching his empire crumble on the news. I visited him one more time before the media attention made it impossible. $30 million, I told him. That's what the FBI calculated you and Brenda would have stolen if you'd succeeded. $30 million worth of dead children. His eyes tracked my movement, full of that same cold calculation I'd seen in the videos. Even now, paralyzed and exposed, he was probably running the numbers, figuring out what went wrong, planning improvements he'd never get to implement. Ellie's parents are suing the estate for everything. The other families too. By the time they're done, there won't be enough money left to keep you in this nice facility. The state nursing home is supposed to be really special, understaffed, neglectful. I hear they have problems with patients developing bed sores. A tear rolled down his cheek. Not remorse, just rage at losing. I leaned close, making sure he could hear every word. Noah's going to use his trust fund exactly like Grandma wanted. College, maybe law school. He says he wants to be a prosecutor. Isn't that perfect? I left him there, trapped in his useless body with nothing but memories of the empire he'd built on small corpses. The nurse smiled at me on the way out, praising me again for visiting my poor grandfather. Outside, Noah waited in the car with our aunt, Dad's sister who'd driven up from Virginia to help. She'd lost her daughter Tori in a pool accident 5 years ago. Now she knew it hadn't been an accident at all. "You okay?" she asked as I slid into the back seat. I thought about lying, putting on the brave face everyone seemed to expect, but I was tired of lies. Our whole family had been built on them. "No," I said, "but I will be." She nodded and pulled out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, I watched the nursing home disappear. Somewhere inside, Grandpa was learning what it felt like to be helpless while someone else controlled your breath. It seemed like poetic justice, but it would never bring Ellie back. It would never undo the years of terror Noah had endured. It would never fill the holes in our family where cousins should have been. All we could do was move forward, build something better on the ashes of Grandpa's empire, make sure no other family suffered the same way, turn our tragedy into purpose. Noah reached over and took my hand. His fingers were steady, no longer shaking. He'd found his voice in that pool, screaming the truth while Brenda tried to drown him. Now he had to figure out how to live with that voice. We all did. The trials started 6 months later. I sat in the witness box, staring at Brenda across the courtroom. She'd lost weight in custody, her designer clothes replaced with an orange jumpsuit, but her eyes still held that calculating coldness. The prosecutor walked me through the videos frame by frame. Ellie struggling, Grandpa's methodical grip, the timestamp showing he'd held her under for 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Several jurors had to leave the room. My testimony took 4 days. Every detail about about the pool parties, the chemicals, the practice sessions. I described finding the plans in Grandpa's study, the sketches with X marks at different depths. The defense attorney tried to paint me as a disturbed teenager who'd attacked her grandfather, but the evidence was overwhelming. Noah testified via closed-circuit TV from another room. He spoke clearly about Brenda holding him underwater, about Christopher pushing him down. He remembered her exact words, "You'll see Ellie soon." The jury foreman wiped his eyes. Christopher had already pleaded guilty in exchange for testifying against Brenda. He detailed their meetings, the cash payments, the instructions to make it look accidental. He'd thought it was insurance fraud until that day at the pool. "She told me the kid just needed to pass out a little," he said. "But when I saw how long she wanted me to hold him under, I knew it was murder." The FBI agent presented Brenda's other identities: Bethany Morrison, Rebecca Watson, Sasha Williams, each name connected to dead husbands and missing stepchildren. 23 victims across 6 states over 18 years. Mom and Dad had to testify too. The prosecutor grilled them about ignoring the warning signs, about sending us back weekend after weekend. Mom broke down completely, admitting she'd noticed the bruises but convinced herself they were from playing. Dad couldn't meet my eyes when he described how Grandpa had promised to help with their debts. The trial revealed more accomplices: a pool maintenance worker who'd been paid to add extra chemicals, a country club employee who'd been told to look the other way during private lessons, even a pediatric nurse who'd been convinced to misreport symptoms of near drowning. Brenda's defense was simple: blame everything on Grandpa. Her lawyer argued she'd been manipulated by a master predator, that she'd married him not knowing his true nature. But the messages between them destroyed that narrative. She'd been the one suggesting new techniques, identifying targets, calculating profit margins on dead children. The worst testimony came from other families: a cousin from Rhode Island whose twin daughters had drowned during a family barbecue, an uncle from New Jersey whose son had disappeared at a beach house Grandpa owned. Each story followed the same pattern: trusted family member, seemingly innocent water activity, tragic accident that no one questioned. One father from Maine broke down completely. His daughter Sophia had been 4 when she drowned in Grandpa's pool. He'd been in the bathroom for 2 minutes. Grandpa said she'd slipped and hit her head, but now he knew the truth. The security footage, enhanced by FBI technicians, showed Grandpa holding her under while pretending to give CPR. The medical examiner testified about the difficulty of proving drowning murders. Water leaves no fingerprints, no DNA under fingernails. Unless someone saw it happen, it was almost impossible to prove. That's why the videos were so damning. Grandpa had documented his own crimes. During a recess, I found Ellie's parents in the hallway. They looked older, hollowed out by grief and rage. Ellie's mother hugged me tight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for stopping him, for making sure no other family goes through this." Her father couldn't speak. He just handed me a photo of Ellie at the beach, laughing with her arms spread wide. She'd been so alive, so trusting. I kept that photo in my pocket through the rest of the trial. The defense's star witness was supposed to be a psychologist who'd evaluated Brenda. He testified about her traumatic childhood, her history of abuse, but on cross-examination, he admitted she'd shown no remorse, no empathy for the victims. She'd only expressed anger at being caught. Brenda took the stand on the last day. She wore a conservative suit, her hair pulled back, trying to look sympathetic. She claimed Grandpa had threatened her, forced her to participate. She even produced tears on cue, but the prosecutor destroyed her with her own words. Message after message where she'd suggested new victims, calculated inheritance values, joked about swimming with the fishes. A video she'd taken of herself practicing holding her breath, timing herself against Grandpa's records. "You were competing with him," the prosecutor said, "trying to prove you could kill children more efficiently." Brenda's mask finally slipped. "Those trust funds were wasted on brats who'd never amount to anything. At least I would have put the money to good use." The courtroom erupted. The judge had to call for order 3 times. Ellie's father lunged toward the defendant's table before bailiffs restrained him. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. 17 counts of murder, 4 counts of attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, the list went on. When they announced the verdict, Brenda didn't react. She just stared at me with those cold eyes, like she was memorizing my face. The sentencing hearing was a month later. Family after family gave victim impact statements. Parents describing empty bedrooms, siblings talking about growing up with ghosts. Noah wrote a letter that I read for him about the nightmares, the fear of water, the therapy sessions where he'd finally started to heal. The judge sentenced Brenda to 17 consecutive life sentences, plus 340 years. No possibility of parole. She'd die in prison, alone and forgotten. As they led her away, she turned to me one last time. "Your grandfather was an artist," she said. "You'll never understand what we accomplished." I felt nothing. She was already a ghost. The civil trials took longer. Grandpa's estate was massive but complicated. Shell companies, offshore accounts, properties in multiple states. The forensic accountants found money hidden everywhere. In the end, they recovered nearly $50 million. The judge ordered it all distributed to the victims' families. Each family would receive compensation based on their loss, with additional funds set aside for therapy and support services. Noah and I were awarded our original trust funds plus damages. It was more money than I could comprehend, but it felt like blood money. We used part of it to move. The house held too many memories, too many family dinners where death had sat at the table with us. We found a small place near the coast, far from any pools. Mom tried to stop drinking. Dad started therapy. They were trying, but the damage was done. I'd never trust them again. Noah surprised everyone by joining the swim team at his new school. His therapist said it was his way of reclaiming power. He was good, really good. All those years of forced lessons had given him perfect technique. He just had to learn to love the water again. I went to every meet, cheering from the bleachers. Sometimes I'd see him pause before a dive, touching his temple the way Grandpa used to. But then he'd shake it off and fly. The Ellie's Wave Foundation launched on the anniversary of her death. Free swimming lessons with certified instructors, mandatory background checks, and multiple lifeguards for every class. Parents had to stay and watch, no exceptions. We'd already taught over 1,000 kids to swim safely. Ellie's parents ran it with fierce dedication. They turned their grief into purpose, making sure no predator could ever use water as a weapon again. I volunteered as an instructor on weekends, teaching little kids to float, to kick, to never be afraid of asking for help. One day, a grandmother brought her granddaughter for lessons. She mentioned how nice it was to find affordable swimming instruction, how her husband used to teach the kids but he'd passed away recently. I watched her carefully, noted how she stayed close to the edge, how she counted when her granddaughter went underwater. After class, I pulled her aside and gave her our safety pamphlet. It listed warning signs, red flags, resources for reporting concerns. She looked confused but thanked me. Later, I added her name to our watch list. Paranoid? Maybe. But 17 dead children had taught me that paranoia could save lives. The other families started their own foundations, pool safety initiatives, drowning prevention programs, lobbying for stricter regulations at public pools. We formed a network, sharing information, supporting each other through anniversaries and hard days. I testified at congressional hearings about pool safety, showed those videos to lawmakers who thought drowning prevention was overregulation, watched them turn green as Grandpa demonstrated his technique on my cousin. Grandpa died 2 years into Brenda's trial. The state nursing home had been exactly as advertised, understaffed, neglectful, bed sores that became infected. He'd spent his last months in agony, unable to speak or call for help. The nurse who called said he'd been trying to write something when he died, dragging his one working finger across the sheet. She thought it looked like SOR, but couldn't be sure. Mom and Dad tried to get us to go to the funeral, still clinging to the fiction that he'd been a good man who'd made mistakes. But I refused to. So did Noah. We were determined to let him rot alone.